Welcome back to the Tech Talk Daily podcast. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today we're going to be delving into the topic at the heart of this digital era that we all find ourselves in. Because with me today is Hans Fischmann from Vericast, a company that's significantly influencing how more than 130 million households eat, shop, buy, save and borrow. So he's going to be sharing insights into Vericast's recent partnership, though, with Qonsent, an initiative that's reshaping the landscape of consumer consent and data privacy. And I think this partnership feels like a pivotal step towards placing customer consent at the forefront of data collection, a necessity in this age where consumer data is increasingly protected and regulated. And Vericast is known for its trailblazing role in data intelligence, marketing services and media delivery. So I want to learn more about how they're pioneering and integrating first-person consent that seamlessly keeps track of data across technology environments. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Naples in Florida, where today's guest is waiting to join us as we both explore how Vericast is reimagining marketing solutions through business-to-human connection and how their innovative approach in ethical data collection is setting new standards in the industry. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
My name is Hans Fischmann. I'm VP of Digital Product at Vericast, which is a marketing technology company that specializes in a variety of industries to help brands better reach their customers. On a direct level, is VP of Digital Product. I'm responsible for all forms of advertising in terms of display, audio, video, CTV, our targeting engines, which include contextual targeting and identity graph-based targeting, and our more recent forays into consent management and in-store media.
And it's been a pretty big year for you, and even incredibly busy. There's been a few partnership foundations, which I'd love to find out a little bit more about. So to begin with, just to set the scene, can you tell me a little bit more about maybe some of the foundational principles that led to this partnership between Vericast and Qonsent, particularly regarding consumer consent and data privacy? Because big topic, isn't it?
It is, and privacy overall obviously is of extreme importance to the advertising industry as well as the marketing industry. And Vericast as a company has always been very privacy forward, meaning that when we deliver advertising, we've never been cookie reliant. It's just not part of our DNA. We do support them if clients ask for it, but that's not how we typically will step forward into the world, if you understand what I'm saying there. Yeah. And we have a very strong foundation in how we've constructed our consumer graph, which is based on deterministic data that we're able to collect based on the various companies and product lines within Vericast's family of companies. In particular, we have a very strong relationship with the United States Postal Service. And as a result, we have access to household level information and we get early access to it. That forms the basis of our consumer graph. We then strengthen those signals with digital information to allow our brands and to enable our brand customers to be able to better reach their customers in a very straightforward, easy, and privacy-safe fashion. As we've always looked at the way this needs to work is protecting the privacy rights of consumers is first and foremost. The extension into actively gaining and capturing affirmative consent from consumers on behalf of our brand customers is a natural extension of what we're already doing. But more importantly, I am a product person, and we tend to look at challenges as opportunities. It's an occupational hazard. And from that perspective, there's actually a lot of reasons why a brand wants to capture affirmative consent from their customers. Namely, is that if you think through the steps of, hey, I see, this soda brand or this shoe manufacturer, they'd like some information from me about how they can better target and personalize messages to me. And that might come in the form of, for a shoe company, maybe it's early access to drops. If you're a sneakerhead, that's pretty valuable, knowing that I can get access to a new set of sneakers before anybody else. Well, in exchange for that, I have to provide some information, and that's referred to as a value exchange. But more importantly, from a product perspective, it actually creates a much stronger affinity between the consumer and the brand. And that's the world where Vericast has always been. That's what we do, and we help foster those relationships. So from a foundational aspect, it's a natural iteration of what we've been doing all along, but we're just taking it to the next level. And, and most importantly, really preparing for what's coming and what the industry has been pushing towards over the last several years since the introduction of GDPR.
And another big topic right now is your consumer consent integration. So can you tell me a bit more about how this first-person consent integration developed through your partnership will actually help a brand's ability to track and manage consumer data, but ethically? And I think there's a reason I emphasize that word ethically, because again, huge talking point.
Yeah, that is important, and we actually embrace that word. It is at the heart of what we're doing here, because I think that ethical collection of the data is important for every player in the field. We all have to understand that it's on us to make sure that we're protecting the rights of consumers up and down the supply chain. So working with consent and the introduction to consent it came through its founder, Jesse Redness, who I've worked with previously. We're both AT&T alums. And one of the key things that we did at AT&T, which operates under already a very strict set of privacy regulations, was that we had built out an opt-in program, and it required opt-in as opposed to assuming that customers would be opt-out. And so I was very familiar with what was required, but I also knew the friction that's involved in that process. There's a fair amount of challenges in terms of getting a consumer to think about providing that information. And I think part of the reason why industry adoption is slowly gaining acceptance is because trying to get folks to opt in and provide that affirmative consent takes a few extra steps. We all complain about the pop-ups in our browser. We go to a website and you got to click accept, or got to approve this usage or disapprove that usage. And it can be a bit onerous in a world where we're trying to get to a one-click status. What I loved about what Consent did and what that team had been able to do is they found a way to, through a much better user experience, to not just bring efficiency and minimal clicks, but most importantly, in plain speak. In other words, as I'm reading through the way that they've approached it and the interface and the extensibility of that interface, meaning that we can put it inside of an ad itself, and the consumer never leaves the ad. We can obviously go to a landing page. We can do a QR code, which can be distributed anywhere. So it's that extensibility of the user experience, removed the friction from adoption. The second part, though, is all the hard work they've done in order to build out integrations. And, it's not just that they themselves have the interface, it's that they've, brought themselves in pretty tightly with Snowflake and a bunch of other companies that made it very easy for us to integrate directly there. And so what it allows us to do as Vericast is using the consent front end, distributing that through advertising, through other mechanisms, we're able to easily, on behalf of our clients, capture that consent from consumers. And that's not just the reason for it. That's what made them so different from other players in this space. It was a very forward-looking approach, and it dovetailed very nicely into how we approach the world.
And of course, with the ever-evolving data privacy regulations unfolding and continuously evolving, how is Vericast navigating this landscape? And what role do you see the partnership with Qonsent playing in this journey too?
I think that there's certainly conversation around regulation legislation, but to be honest, and I think as Vericast, I think really the bigger issue is with the industry itself. We've heard about deprecation of cookies and the removal of maids and Apple's transparency tracking. All of those are have immediate impact. Legislation, may or may not come down the road, but that doesn't change me, that doesn't have any impact on what the industry itself is doing, because the industry is trying to self-police as best they can. And that impacts us directly as a key player in that ecosystem. So as these companies start to adopt new methodologies and new mechanisms for protecting consumer data, it's imperative on us, going back to, doing it ethically. We're all working, under that purview. And so we want to be able to support our fellow industry players, however big or however small they may be. But we want to make sure that we're also doing what's best for our clients in terms of helping guide them through these challenging times. It's unquestionably hard to track everything that's happening in the world of privacy. And yes, there are the legislative issues, but just within the tech industry itself, depending on who you're talking to as the company you want to work with today, it may be that you can't take information from one place to another, which then means that attribution is impacted down the road and targeting becomes very challenging. And as an industry, advertising has absolutely been reliant on data to inform how we market our goods. And as the information signals become reduced and continue to be winnowed away, marketing becomes very difficult and most importantly, almost impossible to execute unless you have somebody that knows how to expertly navigate all of these differences as you go from platform to platform. And that's the role that Vericast plays on behalf of our customers.
And I'm not sure how much you're able to share with everyone today, but is there anything you could share around any maybe new technological innovations at Vericast, perhaps in collaboration with Qonsent, to help stay ahead of this data privacy domain?
Absolutely. We have a variety of platforms and product capabilities that we've built over the years. We're super excited, though, about one of our most recent, which is NextDrive. NextDrive is a platform that enables brands, SMBs in particular, to be able to pull in their fully consented first-party data, have a safe place to store it, and then through the interconnections that we build and the integrations that we've built with other players, allow for our customers that are on the NextDrive platform to be able to target and reach their customers and things like lookalike customers and do acquisition, et cetera, based on fully ethically collected data. Consent is already connected to NextDrive. So any data that's captured through the Qonsent platform flows directly into NextDrive.
Fantastic. And I'm curious, from everything that you're seeing, how are brands leveraging Vericast solutions to better balance the need for effective marketing campaigns with stringent requirements of data privacy regulations? Because there's a huge balancing act going on there, and I think it'd be incredibly helpful for people listening.
Yeah, we look at the value exchange in particular as a different approach than I think a lot of others do. For those that are not familiar that are listening to the podcast, a key tenet of gaining affirmative consent is that there has to be what's called a value exchange. In other words, in exchange for this information, your mobile number, your email address, your home address, I need to give you something that you find valuable in exchange for that. So a simple way of thinking about that is, okay, I will give you 50 cents off this loaf of bread if you give me your phone number, and I will now text you whenever it's on sale or something along those lines. That value exchange, though, is something that it has to take place because you legally can't give away your rights for free. So the idea of how we use the value exchange, though, today there are things like coupons and other types of offers. We tend to think of that in marketing world as bottom of the funnel. They're used to convert somebody, just get them over the finish line. We've attracted them into the top of the funnel, and we've kind of driven them down, and we're just going to give them that little oomph to push them over the line and convert. Well, I believe that, at Vericast and in our thinking, it has more value at the top of the funnel in the sense that that coupon, that 50 cents off, could be used to capture a piece of information, which then allows us to market to that person again and again and again. So rather than a one-time conversion, you potentially have dozens, hundreds of conversions, if used appropriately and effectively. And so as we talk about how to employ these tools, that is how we pull it back into our system, and we work with it in terms of our analysis of campaign performance, et cetera.
And in the context of your partnership that we've talked about today, as well as having the ear of business leaders all around the world, what strategies are you recommending to brands right now to help them safely build an audience while ensuring consumer data protection? I'm sure it's a question you must get asked a lot, but is that anything you can share around that?
Our role is to, as best we can, provide guidance to our customers. We're obviously, I'm not a lawyer and I can't speak as one, but when talking to customers, guidance we provide is, we know that in terms of what's happening in the industry, the requirements are becoming more stringent. There are companies up and down the technology landscape that need to know for their own protection that this information has been collected ethically, and they're going to ask for provenance, and that provenance needs to be in place. So as you don't have to have it solved today, but you need to be working towards it, because the day is coming where data that doesn't come with provenance will likely not be accepted into the ad tech systems. And the better way of saying that is like, look, you've got probably a year or two to get your customer files in shape. Rather than waiting to the last minute, it took you a decade to build those customer files. You might want to start working on getting the fully, the affirmative consent necessary, the ethically collected data into your system today, and start, re-qualifying what you have in there today. And there's no time like the present to get ahead of the problem, because you don't want to be scrambling in, 18 months, 24 months when whatever signal you're using gets shut down. And the idea that this is not something that happens overnight it's a hard one to swallow, because as an industry and as a capitalist society, we tend to think on like a monthly and quarterly basis. It's much harder to think in these 2, 3, 4 year swaths of time. But it goes by in an instant, and before too long, you're going to be scrambling if you haven't taken this legwork in today.
Love that. And before you came on the podcast today, I was reading up on you guys, and one of the things that stood out for me was I was reading that Vericast is aiming to reimagine marketing solutions through business to human connections. So again, I'm curious, how does placing consumer consent at the center of data collection, how does that enhance these connections that we're talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, harkening back to brand affinity.
Yeah.
If I raise my hand and I say, you know what, I do want to have a deeper relationship with you. I am providing you with my personal information so that you can send me custom messages. That's, as near as I can tell, the closest thing to a warm lead that any company is ever going to get. Yes, I like you. Please tell me more. And more importantly, this is how I want you to give it to me. I want you to send me an email. I want you to send it to my house, or I want you to send it to my mobile. And those things actually are incredibly important for how we market. So, for example, the average, marketing campaign reaches across multiple channels, and each channel is given an assigned spend amount. And there are people that are working to, acquire media to be able to deliver those messages down those individual channels, whether it's print or radio or TV or digital or podcasts. And if you have a customer that is telling you, hey, tell me more about your product, or they just want you to send me a text message or send me an email, that is of significant importance to that marketing spend, because you now can be very targeted in that advertising. You have less waste. And more importantly, the response rates will be higher as a result of that. So this concept of how does it impact your marketing spend is incredibly important, obviously, because nobody's got unlimited budgets. But I think to a kind of a more art of what we do speak, there are certain brands that have massive affinity, Apple being an example of that, the Canon versus Nikon versus Sony debates that happen in the camera world, the iPhone versus the Android phone world. When you talk about this concept of brand affinity, it does extend into just about every industry, and people have their favorites. I mean, even in the financial industry, there are certain banks that are a little bit more, cherry, if you will, for certain consumer sets, because they have been able to deliver a product and a message that just really resonates. So, if you can do it in something as banking, it should be true for just about any industry. And what this allows you to do by capturing that first party consent is to start that conversation, to start that dialogue with your customers that you really can't do when you're doing mass market marketing. And we at Vericast, of course, support that. And our role is to help guide and counsel through that process and develop strategies that work for you and help you do the analysis necessary to be able to drive a much better communication and discussion and dialogue with your customers.
And if we dare to look at the future of ethical data collection in 2024 and indeed beyond, how do you see that relationship between data privacy and marketing evolving? And are there any steps that Vericast is taking to maybe help lead in that space too?
Yeah, there's over the course of the last, decade or two, the world of MarTech, marketing technology, and ad tech have been on a convergence path. They've been coming together, and the two stacks getting tightly integrated with each other to the point where people, somewhat jokingly refer to it as mad tech, because it's marketing and ad tech all in one, right? And so I think that what the changes we're seeing are actually the separation of the two again. They're going to start coming apart, despite, at least 10, 15 years of work to push them together. We need to start looking at them in different ways, which is that advertising tech and how we approach advertising tech has to be more broad market based. It shouldn't have the signals that allow for tight delivery of messaging. It needs to focus on mass market messages, broadcast messages, if you will. And that's where systems and tools of targeting like contextual come in. And, Vericast has earlier this year, and I know it's off the topic of this particular podcast, but, we did announce a very beefy new launch of our contextual targeting platform, which processes just massive volumes of data to be able to allow our customers to reach the customers they're trying to reach, but completely free of any PI. There is zero PI used. There are no audiences. It is a contextual targeting system that we built from the ground up based on our capabilities in the industry. So for ad tech, our contextual targeting system is separated from our marketing tech solution, NextDrive. What we can do, however, is that we can use NextDrive to determine the kinds of audiences. So your consumer data sits safely inside of NextDrive, fully consented. We have information about the consumers in that database, and we can start to understand their interests and build from there. So, for example, we know that a certain segment likes pickleball, as an example, right? Our contextual engine has an index of all of the pickleball-related brand-safe sites that are out there, and and soon to be CTV, et cetera, so that we can help our customers in a privacy-centric way reach more pickleball players or enthusiasts without ever violating PI, but at the same time, basing it on what we know are our best customers, our clients' best customers, to clarify. That's an example of how the two, although will still work together, they're not directly connected. And I suspect we'll see that approach happen more and more across the industry because it's PI safe. It does speak to the challenge. Grossly speaking, there is going to be two kinds of audiences in the future. There's going to be knowns and there's going to be unknowns. Knowns will be fully consented, affirmative consent, and the unknowns will be everybody else. I'm sure that the 80-20 rule will kick in here, but ideally what you're doing is you're trying to convert unknowns into knowns with your marketing over time.
Well, I love chatting with you today. And conscious we have talked a lot about where we are now and the future and where we're heading. But of course, you've had a hugely successful career and none of us are able to achieve any degree of success without a little help along the way. So I'm curious, is there a particular person that you might be grateful towards? Maybe they saw something in you, invested a little time and played a big part in getting you where you are. I'd love to give them a little shout out today, but who would that person be for you?
That's a great question. His name is Barry Feldstein. I can tell you exactly who he is. When I was working at a prior company, he was the CFO. This is a publicly traded company, CFO, but I was junior in my career. I think I was a director at the time, and he was my formal mentor. And the best way to describe Barry is that he resembled the skipper from Gilligan's Island. Giant barrel-chested guy, and big bushy mustache, shock white hair. And he was an avid tennis player and would often go directly from work to go play tennis. And so you'd see him, this man with bounding out of the office to go play tennis. But when talking to him over the course of, many years, he actually shared a really important piece of advice for me. And again, this is the CFO of a publicly traded company. He shared that my job here is I'm a consultant. I'm not here to make the decisions. It's my job to pull up the data and let other people make the decisions. I have to make sure that data is as close to single source of truth as possible and it's as accurate as possible. But how I feel about it isn't really germane. It's just my job to generate the data. And that's how we are in product. Product needs to be data driven, and we need to look at what's actually happening to determine the best path forward for a company. But we don't determine that. What we do is we listen to everyone. We do a ton of research. I read incessantly to be able to help everyone in the company better understand what's going on. Much as I've been able to share with you and your audience about how consent plays an important part in marketing moving forward. And I'm forever grateful to Barry for that because, I have a tendency to be, passionate and curious, and I love to get excited about stuff. And it, from a corporate standpoint, from an executive standpoint, and more importantly, from a good stewardship of our roles inside of companies, it really helped to set the table for me to understand, it's not about what gets us excited. It's about what's the right thing to do. And sometimes that's not an obvious path. Sometimes it's not the easiest path either. We've touched on that in this podcast that, not necessarily capturing consent isn't the easiest thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And so I've carried that with me for quite some time now, Neil, and I'm sure I'm going to carry it all the way to the end.
Oh, that is beautiful. A beautiful moment to end on. A big shout out to Barry there. And for anyone listening that would like to find out more information about anything that we talked about today and dig a little bit deeper or contact your team, where would you like to point everyone listening?
Vericast.com is a great place. And in terms of digging in, we have everything you need to know about our privacy stance as well as our consent product on the website. So thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you. I love chatting with you today, learning more about how Vericast is reimagining marketing solutions, one business to human connection at a time. I also believe you're influencing something like over 130 million households, which is just incredible. But that recent partnership and that shared goal of placing consumer scent at the center of ethical data collection, I think that's a topic that will rage on in 2024. So it'd be great to get you back on next year, see how things continuously evolve. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing your story today.
No, thank you, Neil. And I would look forward to giving you that update because I know we're going to be quite successful.
I think our discussion today has been both enlightening and thought-provoking because we did dive into the intricate world of data privacy and the crucial role of consumer consent in ethical data collection. And that partnership we were talking about, I think that marks a significant step in the right direction, offering brands that practical solution to manage consent in a compliant manner while still engaging effectively with their audience. And I think we also explored the impact of evolving data privacy regulations on the advertising industry and how to let technological innovations like the NextDrive platform, and also for highlighting the importance of placing the consumer at the center of data collection strategies, not only to enhance connections and marketing tactics, but to uphold the values of privacy and consent. And this conversation is just going to continue to evolve next year at a rapid pace. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, how you're dealing with it. Did we miss anything today? Did you disagree with anything? Whatever it is, email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilCHughes. At the end of every podcast episode, I always ask you to email me questions, tips, advice, insights. And one of the most common questions I get is, Neil, you're a tech podcaster doing a tech podcast every day. What tech podcasts do you listen to? Well, if you're a business leader, chances are that you've probably had to confront the question of whether you should bring Macs into the enterprise. Because yes, it is a PC world, maybe a Chromebook world in some organisations, but there's no avoiding the fact that some users prefer Mac devices and their platforms. So when I was looking at learning more about how businesses can adopt Mac across their business and its upsides and overcoming challenges and complications, I came across a podcast created by SHI, and it's called We Got Your Mac. Essentially, We Got Your Mac is a podcast that is trying to help business leaders understand the pros and cons of Mac adoption. And the hosts, Victoria Barber and Kevin English, they lead their listeners on a journey from discovery to deployment with thought leaders and specialists from the world of Apple Mac. So they explore questions like, is your employee experience suffering by only offering one platform? Can you drive productivity with a device choice? And do Mac platforms help support innovation? Because adopting Mac at scale isn't purely an IT decision, it's a business decision. So the show doesn't get super technical, but rather it's on a level that everyone can relate to. And as you all know, that's something I try and do with this podcast too. I've listened to the first few episodes and I'm excited for the rest of the season because they've already released episodes on topics such as building the business case, understanding the total cost of ownership, and collaborating in Windows-dominated workplaces. And they have episodes coming out every few weeks. So if this is something that would interest you, I thoroughly recommend it. Why not give it a listen? Subscribe to We Got Your Mac wherever you get your podcasts, or go to wegotyourmac.com where you can access all the episodes and great bonus resources for business leaders like you. Other than that, remember, check out my tech column at Techopedia, where I write every day. And if there's anything that sparks your interest there, give me a shout. But thank you for listening today, and until next time, don't be a stranger.